Prayer.
You want to pray for the floor? Oh, hold on, guys. Sorry. I haven't hit go on the stream. Did you hit go? Yeah, I did. Is it live on YouTube too? Yes, okay. So we'll use the mics during the meeting so that it can go to the stream, just so everyone knows. If you want to say something, we'll grab the mics. But welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here at our meeting. Let's open with prayer. The Lord be with you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day where we get to come and we get to do the work of the church. Lord, there's so many details that go into keeping this place going and moving. And we ask that you give us words, that you give us the opportunities to speak, to listen, to know that you are in charge of every dynamic here. Thank you. Thank you for our council, for the ways that they make decisions. Thank you for our treasurer, Jim Anderson, for June, for the ways and the time they've put into this. Thank you to have our preschool staff here and just how grateful we are for all that they do to love the kids of this neighborhood and of our school. Lord, we are so amazed at your love for us, and we are grateful for our staff and for Townsend and for Maureen and Tammy and Lisa and just the ways that you flow through our staff into this community. So Lord, let us make decisions now based on our wisdom and love for you. Amen.
Okay, thank you, Pastor. All right, at this time, we are going to approve the minutes from our last congregational meeting, which was held on June 6, 2021. And in your booklet is a copy of the minutes. They are on page 10. I'll give you a little bit of time to look over them. Okay, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Cindy, thank you. Do I have a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. All right, at this time, we are going to have our treasurer, Jim Anderson, go over a financial review and the budget. Jim?
Okay, for the financial review, we'll start with the income statement for the church. This is going to show the actual results compared to the budget for 2021. If you turn to pages 12 and 13 of the annual report, you'll see that it folds out into one page, so you can see the whole statement displayed. That way you can follow the numbers as I'm describing them, as this presentation will move to new slides that will have my words as opposed to the numbers on them. I want you to notice one thing on the slide, though. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a number, $509,000 approximately. It's the 2019 last actual offerings number we had pre-COVID. And that's a number I'm going to be speaking to. So I've added it to the slide that's on this presentation, even though it's not on the annual report because it's a prior year. Okay. I'm also going to be only going over the major variances. I want to keep things moving along and just kind of highlight the biggest things that were obvious. If you have any questions, please let me know and be happy to go over them. You can go to the next slide. Oh. I'm sorry? She did already. June did. They're in the back. So yeah, the presentation's in the back. We have both the annual report, which has the numbers, it's the small booklet, and we have my comments as well in the back if you want to pick up a copy. Okay. So on the top section of the income statement, the income section, you'll notice that the offerings came in a bit above budget. We budgeted the 2021, because we're still in COVID, $80,000 less than we had in the last year that we were normal, the 2019 number I showed you already. So we did a little bit better than we budgeted, but we're still a ways away from getting back to normal after COVID. So I want to make sure that that's clear. The 2021 offerings were about even with 2020. So those 2 years came in about the same. Both of them were affected by COVID the same way. If you look at the last line on the income section of your schedule, the other income line, you'll see that we did better than we expected, and that's because of a bequest we received of $27,000 in November of 2021. So that's why we did a little bit better. Moving down to the next section, the expense section, staff costs were a little bit lower than we expected. We had a vacancy in the youth director position for most of the year, not all of it, but most of the year. So there were substantial savings there. But most of those savings were then eaten up by increases in other areas. We had some changes in staffing. We had another person go full-time with benefits, and we had some raises in there as well. So with all those netted together, we actually came in a bit less than budget at almost $10,000. The next two categories I'll talk about are increases over the budget. We were higher. First one is facilities. We had higher utility costs and janitorial supply costs all during the year, so it came in higher than we expected. Finance and administration line, if you look there, you'll see we're almost $29,000 over what we budgeted, and that's primarily due to two reasons. We spent $10,000 to get a new copier when our old one came off lease, and to return the old equipment to the leaseholder. So that was part of it. And then the $12,000 as well we spent on additional audio and visual equipment for streaming the services. So those two are unanticipated costs that were going into that overage that we had there. At the bottom of the expense section, you'll see a line that says operating loss. I want to focus on that number because that's what we can look at as a cash flow number. Since we're running losses the last couple of years, that's the number we need to make sure we have some way of funding with cash to be able to cover that basically, because our operations are not funding it by themselves. So that's the number that's key from a cash standpoint, as opposed to the numbers that come down below it. And you'll see we had about a $56,000 loss for 2021, a little bit better than the $86,000 we expected in the budget. And the reason it was better was because of that bequest that we received that was unexpected. If it hadn't been for that, the budget would have been amazingly close to the actual. Moving down to the next section, the other income section. On the parsonage investment, this is an investment that the church made in Scott's first house. We realized $163,000 increase in the value of that investment when he sold his first house this last year. And then we rolled that money over along with the original investment into his second house. So that's all that's now invested in the second house is our parsonage investment. The next line, the PPP loan, we received that money in 2020, but the government didn't actually forgive that loan, so we don't have to pay it back until 2021. So we don't record it in income until 2021 until it was forgiven. So that's why it's showing us that number. That money was key to covering our losses this year. We used a bunch of that money in 2021 to cover the losses the church was running. Going to the next section, which is the transfer section, this is focusing on the cash from the church's perspective that's going in and out. If I net the numbers together, the cash we added to our reserves and the cash we took out of our reserves netted to about an $84,000 positive increase to our reserves. This was much better than we anticipated, and the reasons for that are coming up next. Okay? So you can see then in that section also the preschool. We've had 4 years where the church has been supporting the preschool with cash to keep it going. This year things have turned, the tables have turned, and the preschool actually is funding the church losses in 2021. So the preschool did very well in 2021, generated excess cash that we were able to use to help the church out. And that number was $111,000 that was transferred from the preschool, and it was much better than the $28,000 that we expected at the beginning of the year. So that was very good news. Also, the $27,000 bequest that I mentioned and the preschool cash transfers, if we hadn't had either one of those or both of those in the results for 2021, we actually would have had a negative cash outflow from our reserves to cover the loss. So the $56,000 loss that you saw for 2021 would have been a reduction in the reserves instead of the increase we saw because of these two special situations. Okay. Any questions on the income statement? Okay. Then I'll move to the balance sheet. If you move to the next page and open it up on your annual report, you'll see that that's the balance sheet. I want to make sure you have the updated version. The first version I published, I made a slight change to. You should see in the middle of the page a category called Investments Long Term. If you see that category, you have the current version of the budget, of the balance sheet. So it's important to separate that number. And so I've done that and it's normal to do that on financial statements. The investments short term that you see right above that, and the cash, of course, those are funds that we can use to pay our bills with. So that's important to know how much is there. The investments long term, they're invested in things that we can't really get out of quickly. They're not really available for paying our bills. So it's important to set those aside and have them in a separate category. And so that's what I've done with the updated version. If you look at the balance sheet, you'll see if you added up the unrestricted cash, that's the cash that's not dedicated to any certain purpose. The total for the preschool and the church is about $80,000 at the end of 2021. That number was $48,000 at the end of 2020, so we have made improvement in that. The improvement has come from the reasons that I've already mentioned, the preschool funds that were able to be transferred over and the bequests that came in. Okay. Any questions on the balance sheet? All right. Then I'll move to the next page. Again, if you open up your next page on your annual report and fold it open, you'll see the full page. This one repeats the income statement you've already seen. So it's got the budget and actual for 2021. And then next to it, it has the 2022 proposed budget in the third numerical column. And then the last column is going to be the variance between what we actually have for 2021 and what the budget we're proposing for 2022 shows. So you can easily see the ups and downs. Okay. The first category I'll talk about, and the first one on the schedule, is the offerings. We're budgeting $473,000 in offerings for 2022. That's a 2.9% increase over 2021. A modest increase, we think that's achievable. It still doesn't get us back, though, to normal. It still doesn't get us back to the 2019 level. But we are hoping to move in that direction. So that's where that number comes from. The facility use number is the next line, and that one has gone up slightly. We're hoping with COVID moderating somewhat in 2022, a few things that are not happening the last couple of years will be happening again in 2022. So on this line, it's the summer workshop. In the summertime, an organization comes in and does a performing arts workshop. And so they've had to cancel that the last 2 years. And we're hoping that'll come back again this year. If it does, then we should see a positive number there. The other one I want to focus on is the other income line, which is the last line on the income category. You'll see that's going down, and that's because of that bequest we received of $27,000. So we wouldn't have any reason to expect that to repeat. So I'll move to the budgeted expenses category, which is the next category down. You'll see staff costs are increasing nearly $12,000. That's a combination of factors, some up and some down. We have higher payroll costs now and higher benefits costs. We've had some changes in staffing during the year, and we have higher praise band costs, which are going in there. Moderating the higher costs is we don't have the youth director position filled, so we're saving the money that was incurred in 2021 in the beginning of the year before that situation became vacant. And then also we have some lower workers' comp premium costs as well. So the net of all those is about a $12,000 increase over 2021. On the youth ministry, it's the same reason that I had mentioned earlier on having the performance workshop in the summertime. We're assuming that with COVID hopefully moderating, the youth camp in the summertime would actually be happening again in 2022 after being canceled the last 2 years. On the finance and administration line, you'll see that there's a decrease there, and that's for the explanation we've already gone over for the increase in 2021 actual. don't plan to buy any more copiers, so that's $10,000, and we don't plan to purchase more streaming equipment for $12,000. So with taking those out, we should be less than 2021 actual. Okay, on the bottom of the expense section, you'll see the operating loss line again that I've discussed before. For the budget, we're showing a $76,000 loss for the proposed budget for 2022. Obviously, that number is substantial and it cannot be sustained forever, but the council is still confident that that's the right way to go this year and is recommending that you approve it. And the reasons for that is the budget is expecting improvement in the offerings, as we mentioned, and we also expect that we are seeing new faces in the services, especially at 10:30. So we're hoping with new member growth and with more people returning to the regular services, more of our members returning as COVID moderates, that we will see increases in the offering line. Also, I mentioned that the preschool is doing very well. It's still doing very well. And so we're counting on them helping to support the church again as they did in 2021 and 2022 as well. So if we drop down to the last category on that schedule, the transfer category, again, this is cash. You'll see that the reserves we added this year in 2021 unexpectedly are coming right back out of the reserves in 2022. So we're budgeting $61,000 coming out of the reserves that we added in 2021 to fund that loss, that $76,000 loss. And we're also assuming $15,000 coming from the preschool's excess cash to help us cover that loss for 2022. Okay? Are there any questions on the schedule or on the budget for 2022? If there are no questions, can I get a motion to approve the calendar 2022 church budget as presented? Betsy? Okay. Second? Okay. I guess, do you want to do the vote or should I do the vote?
Okay, thank you, Jim. He's going to continue, but at this time, we're going to have a preschool update by our... Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, do we have a first and a second? I thought we did that. Okay, we have a first and a second. So all those in favor of approving the 2022 budget signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to have a preschool update by our director of preschool, Maureen. And as Jim indicated, the preschool has had a wonderful year. And on behalf of the council, I want to honor and recognize the preschool teachers and Maureen for having a fabulous year. And I have a vested interest because I have a granddaughter attending and she loves all of you. She comes home every day saying, I have a new teacher and I really like her. And I hear that almost all the time. So anyway, I commend you all for the work that you do. And I'm going to turn it over to Maureen.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to briefly let everybody know that the preschool is thriving. Not only, I think most importantly that we've made it through the pandemic, not only just sustaining but growing. And we're very, very thankful to these people who are here right now. So I kind of wanted to introduce them to you. At the same time, acknowledge them for their hard work because they've been working really hard, much, much harder than they really had to before with sanitizing everything and following all of the COVID mandates throughout this last couple of years. This has been really, really hard for all of us. So I would like them to come up one by one and I just want to give them some flowers. Allison. sorry. So I'm going to do a shameless plug for a fundraiser. We're trying to send all these wonderful people to a week-long study group. And of course, the cost of hotels and food and all that stuff is more than our budget really can accommodate. So we are doing a virtual auction again this year, but we're also selling raffle tickets. So if anybody wants to buy raffle tickets, I have them here. They're $1 each or 12 for $10. We would really appreciate your support. We're really doing well over there. The children are thriving. The children are learning how to be better human beings, and that's our goal. And we're very, very happy with what's happening at the preschool. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Maureen. Okay, and at this time, we are going to go through the preschool budget. So I'm going to ask Jim to come back again and go through that.
Okay, for the preschool, we have everything on one slide. This is very similar to the slide you saw, ministry and mission budget slide for the church. First column is the budget, and second column is the actual for 2021. So it's got the income statement essentially here. And then the last column is the 2022 budget. So I've done the same thing I did in the church slide that's in the presentation, not what's in your annual report. You'll see a number up there in the far right corner, top right corner, $223,000. That was the tuition in 2019, the last pre-COVID year. And you'll see in the second column, the actual tuition this year was $484,000, more than twice what it was just 2 years ago. So they had a banner year this year. In fact, if I look back the last 20 years, there are only 3 years at this level: 2007, 2008, and 2021. So it's a great year. That number came from higher enrollment through the whole year. So despite COVID, they've just done record numbers on their enrollment. We had the kindergarten program that ended in August, so now it's back to just the regular preschool program. But even with without the kindergarten program, the attendance is just off the charts. So they're doing really well. They had a waiting list, I know, at one point. I'm not sure if they still do. So it's been doing really well. If you do look down a little bit lower, the fundraising line in the income section, you'll see that's a little higher too. Maureen mentioned the fundraiser she's doing this year. It's kind of an annual tradition at the first quarter of the year. She did much better last year than she has done in the past, and so we had a positive variance on that number in the beginning of 2021. If we just temporarily glance down toward the bottom of the page, you see in other income, a grant income line. As Maureen was able to do last year, she got another grant. This one was for $6,500. So all the news on the income side, it's all good news, just really good news, and nothing but positives. Moving down to the expense category, you'll see the staff expenses are higher. We've had to hire more teachers to handle the higher enrollment. During the middle of the year, we also were using substitute teachers from an agency to try and cover while we're looking for permanent replacement people. We also had raises during the year, so a combination of all those factors, we've had the staff expenses actually go up, but the income has gone up far more than the expenses have. So it's still a very positive sign. The other item I wanted to look at was the program line, second to last line in the expense category. You can see that's quite a bit higher than we expected. So there are a lot more program costs for having the kindergarten program in addition to the regular program, the higher enrollment. And then one thing people wouldn't know about unless we said something, is COVID has an impact there as well, because with all the rules and restrictions, they have to buy snacks that are individually wrapped for each child and things like that. So the supplies are much more expensive in a COVID environment than they are in a regular environment. And that's why that cost went up as much as it did. And if you look at the operating income line, $101,000 positive for 2021. Really a banner year. On the transfers, it's just basically a repeat of what we've already talked about. The preschool was able to transfer $111,000 versus the $28,000 we had budgeted. So it was very helpful to the church to have those funds available. Switching to the budget column, the last column, you'll see that the results overall are pretty consistent with 2021 actual. So we're still anticipating the same high enrollment, similar cost structures. You will see that the staff costs have gone up though. This year we'll have a full year of the impact of the increases that happened in 2021. So the raises, the new teachers, the more benefits, all those things will be for the whole year, where they were just incurred part of the year as we're adding those things during 2021. So otherwise, I think it looks pretty normal compared to what 2021 looked like. The transfers, we're assuming 15,000, as I've already mentioned, coming from the preschool to help fund the losses for the church. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I'm sure that the council and preschool.
Oh, is that Phil? Tom's bring a microphone so it can show up.
How about if I just take this?
No, this microphone, yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm sure the council and the preschool have done their usual really diligent job in making their projections for next year. I'm assuming that part of those calculations took into account the fact on the preschool side that there are a number of benefits, monetary benefits that were provided by the federal government and perhaps the state government last year, which may have had an impact on enrollment, which are not going to be available in 2022 and thereafter. Is that accurate to say?
Well, there was a grant of 40,000 in 2020. There was 6,500 in. If that's what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the federal government making advances to people for child care.
Oh, the parents' income, not the
yes,
preschool's. Okay.
Yes, yeah, which may or may not have had an impact on enrollment. I would be surprised if it didn't have some impact. Hopefully, not a great deal, but that money and its availability to help defray parents' costs in the new year, as I understand it, aren't going to be there.
One of our concerns was what the impact would be at the beginning of the new school year. The school year starts in September this year, because we anticipated that the schools would be reopening, the preschools would be reopening specifically, which they were not really available, the public preschools, during the COVID time. They did, as far as I understand, they did reopen. We still have the competitive preschools out there, and our enrollment has instead not fallen off, it's actually increased.
Excellent.
So we are doing very well, and we're now 4 months into the new school year. So I know there have been some COVID issues. Our preschools struggle with them as well, with the Omicron variant and everything. It's been more prevalent than we've experienced in the past, but so far it's just been going great gangbusters. So we haven't seen that impact yet. So
good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the calendar 2022 preschool budget as presented? Betsy? A second? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, we have a first and second on the table, so I'd like to signify by saying aye to approve the preschool budget. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. And I do want to take this time to really thank Jim. He does an extraordinary job on everything for us. Okay. There are two more issues that we need to discuss. One was unanticipated with respect to the parking lot. The other is a recommendation about the endowment fund that was made by our Business Administration Committee. So but we're going to tackle the parking lot issue first. So Pastor is going to come up here and... What? Oh, you want to do in the endowment first? Okay, then I'm going to invite Paul Rayesky to come up as a representative for the Business Administration Committee to discuss their recommendation.
Good morning, everybody. Undoubtedly, just to kind of set the stage here, show of hands, does everybody know what an endowment is? Or does anybody not know what an endowment is? You want me to kind of go through that? Okay. Undoubtedly, you guys have all heard of all the billions of dollars that like Harvard and Yale and USC and other colleges have. You know, these funds or these are set up for the long-term survival and the long-term benefit of the institution. And going along those lines, I personally thought it was really important that Ascension starts taking a longer-term view on its survival, especially after these last few years, when we were very fortunate for various reasons to be able to get through it relatively easily. I don't want to say it was easy, but just relatively easy to some other churches or other entities that have gone through things and continue to go through things. So we started to propose the idea of establishing an endowment fund, and the endowment fund basically would be money that's given to the church that's put into a long-term kind of management, as opposed to the short-term nature of other reserves and other funds that we have. The goal here is to spend a small amount of that each year for different projects, or for funding long-term growth of the church, not just your everyday expenses, not just operating costs or capital costs and things like that, but getting the church to start thinking in the terms of long-term, so that we can grow the church and kind of reestablish ourselves in the neighborhood. So, with that in mind, give you an idea, a couple things long-term. Maybe we want to hire an associate pastor. So if we had funds in the endowment fund, maybe we would use that money to support the housing or the parsonage for that pastor. That's just an example of what could possibly be used for. Ongoing, our proposal you'll see in a second is going to suggest that we take 3% of those funds and use that to generate, or to use that for things that maybe evangelism, maybe some sort of things like that, to bring more people into the church and to help, again, grow the church. All right, what's on this one? Okay, so that's the purpose. Now, what we'll do is we'll establish a committee, a committee of 5 people. The objective is to have one person roll off each year, so it would be a continually new people coming onto the committee, but it would be 5 people, 5-year terms, but each year one person would trade or exchange. That way it's, helps for the new ideas, new people. It's not just, some person getting in there and saying, this is what we're doing, and leaving it at that. What we did, just as a little bit of a background, we polled a number of different entities. We had some information from other churches, and we have some of their contracts or some of the things they put together. Probably the most helpful so far has been the neighborhood church down in the peninsula, down in Malaga Cove, yeah. And they've helped us a lot, given us a lot of ideas. So a lot of this stuff, since we really liked it, we stole from their paperwork, to be honest. But, sometimes it's better just to take their stuff and then, work through it. Anyway, so the idea is to take any undesignated gifts to the church that are under $25,000. Let's see, maybe saved at the discretion of the council. If they're not needed, they'll be added to the endowment fund. And if it's over $25,000, again, not undesignated, it'll be treated as the council as an unrestricted gift, and 90% of that would go to the endowment fund. Again, with the goal of pushing the funds forward into the future. All right, so now let's hope and pray we have billions of dollars. No, I'm just kidding, that'll never happen. But we have it, we actually get a fund we can actually start doing some things with over time. The assets would be held in, well, that's kind of obvious, in the form of cash, stocks, bonds. The other thing is that this could help some people in their tax planning if they wanted to. So that's one of the things that people may want to look at. There's things called, it's going to escape my brain for a second. charitable remainder trusts and things like that are kind of clever ways to do some fancy things if somebody wanted to do that. It's also a nice way for them to pass on some legacy if somebody ever wanted to do those kind of things. And it gives the members of the church an opportunity to do those and in more creative ways than we have today. So that was, let's see, the funds will be managed independently by the committee of, again, the 5 people. And it'll be separated and not commingled with the other funds of the church, the reserve funds in particular. Okay. The goal here is to manage these funds into perpetuity and to grow the funds over time. The primary objective is to grow these funds hopefully in excess of, the current inflation that's going on, and to have an annual return rate of at least 3% over inflation, which when inflation's low, it's easy. When inflation's high, it may not be so easy. Anyway, and then again, to start with, we wanted to do 3% of the fund at the beginning, and then in 2 or 3 years from now, we will reassess that and see if we can go higher if there's more funds in there, or as we break certain thresholds, maybe if it gets over $1 million, we increase it, things like that. Okay. The philosophy is to, again, manage it for the long-term capital appreciation. Our plan right now is to probably put it into the S&P 500 because it's in an exchange traded fund because it's a super low cost, and over time it is proven to be a very good investment vehicle, and it simplifies a lot of the decision making, and we could avoid potentially having to have an advisor, and that could potentially avoid saving 1 to 1.5%. And it really simplifies a lot of these different issues. And typically over time, the S&P 500 does beat about 95% of the funds that are out there in the universe. And again, we could use the fund for parsonage or other such things like that. Let's see, what's the administration we talked already? Oh, we plan to take the 3%. The way it would get calculated over time is it'll take the balance at the end of the 3 years, and then it would be a rolling average. So in a down year of the market or an up year of the market, we can kind of adjust or deal with that piece of it and not have, well, since the market went down, we may not want to sell that much, but the market, it's the fluctuations that just helps us. Let's see. Some of these things are kind of redundant. I've already covered. Okay, let's see. Future steps. Today, what we want to do is create or get your blessing, if you will, to move forward with this. We're going to take the next few months, because it's a lot of work, to actually go out and, if everybody likes the idea, go out and do the work that's necessary, get the contract made, get the advice, blah, 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 all the other heavy lifting that needs to be done before we actually create this. So that's, as we move forward, our idea at this point, again, if anybody wants to share their ideas, we would more than, we'd like to listen to you. We'd like to hear from you. I should say, not listen to you. But the idea right now is toward the end of the year, we hope to do a formal passing of the endowment fund in July, and then from July to the end of the year, most likely, do a matching from the church reserves. So if somebody puts in, $100, the church would match it, so we'd have $200, and so forth. And if somebody put in $50,000, then we could match that with the other $50,000. Currently, the thinking is to match it on the first $50,000, and then after that, leave it alone. But that way, we would get hopefully in that threshold of 100,000. So then it becomes something that percentage actually can start helping. So, okay, and with that, any questions? Any comments? Anything? Everybody just loves it. Come on, it can't be that easy.
Paul, I have a question and comment.
One moment, sir.
Paul, one question, one comment. The question is, and I think you just answered it. This is today merely informational, correct?
Yes.
That's the motion, Phil. The motion's on the screen.
yeah, we're not voting to pass the endowment. We still have to get the legal documents finalized. There's,
I don't know what kind of a motion that is, but in any event.
the motion is to confirm the interest of establishing the endowment fund as presented and grant the authority to the council and the delegation to pass such things as the fund's congressional approval, including those legal and financial resources necessary for the investigation of the fund.
Excellent.
Boy, that's a big one.
We can both read, but I still don't understand why this is a motion.
Basically, we're gonna need a little bit of money to go figure out if we can do this. Not much, $1,000. So the motion would be, do we want to do this? So it's kind of like the biggest thing for me, because we're gonna have to go create the legal documents. That'll cost us a few $1,000s probably to get those all finalized. And then once we come back, we would present the legal documents for everybody to review, get their input, finalize the guidelines, and then establish the fund in July.
All right, then that leads to two comments. Sorry.
Oh, no.
First comment then is, if this is more than simply an informational presentation, and you're now saying that it is, then this is a fairly complex piece of, let's call it legislation, to consider cold. And I think it's questionable that we are first seeing the written proposal this morning when we're expected to vote on something. Just don't...
All we're really asking for is, as an organization, do we want to look into this? Because as you are even pointing out, this is there's a lot to this.
Certainly.
And to go spend the time and energy to develop it is not trivial. So I didn't personally want to get going down a rabbit hole just because I have an agenda, I'd like to have this, and find out that, well, nobody else cares. Because if that's the case, that's fine. I just didn't want to do that. So that's why we're bringing it up today. So this isn't supposed to be like the final decision. This is more like, do you guys want us to explore this? Is this something that makes sense as an organization for us to do?
Yeah, and are we willing to invest X number of dollars in that exploration?
Correct.
Okay. I still think it's only fair that if there's something this involved that the congregation is being asked to weigh in on, the congregation ought to see it at least a week or two before the meeting. Comment number 2, on the substance of the material, and I'm personally, I can go both ways on endowment funds for churches. In one respect, I think they're a very good idea. In another respect, I think they're probably not such a good idea. But the way this one is structured, or at least as it's described, the biggest problem that I have with the way it's outlined, and this is after 10 minutes of rather hurried review, and I don't see a page number on this, but under the section Gifts and Bequests, where it is specifying how various bequests will be handled, I think the proposal is taking any decision-making on how a large bequest should be handled out of the hands of the council. And I would be willing to bet that it would be the intention of someone making a bequest, but without specifying what it's to be used for, that the church, the recipient of that money, would be the body determining how it should be best used. If I were to leave however much money to the church, in all likelihood, I would not designate a purpose, because I would trust the council at that time when they receive the money to make the best use of the funds. This proposal takes that decision-making out of the council's hands, and I'm not sure that that's a good idea.
We could put you on the committee.
No, thank you. No more comments or questions.
I'm just saying, this level is pretty much taken directly from the neighborhood church. Not that they're the, whatever. And we also took the same kind of proposal from what was the church down in south? Red Hill, down in Orange County. And they had a similar provision. So again, this isn't necessarily the final, and it needs to go through and be vetted. This is just some of the pieces that we picked up as the business committee. We batted around. There was also talk about, well, it gets so big, what if you need it? Well, we didn't include all the details in here, but there are provisions in the first draft of what we drew up to take the money. If the council votes on it, they can take the money and do stuff. Or if it gets too big, then it has to go to the congregation and those kind of things. Because those needs over time are going to happen. Sandy?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, she needs the mic.
Okay. This is somebody in the room that knows probably less about finances than anybody, but in my ignorance, I'm going to ask this question. If someone gives a large amount to the church now, okay, I'm assuming that that's just not all spent. I'm assuming that the council or whoever is, dealing with this income, invests it in some way. I don't know. Maybe they don't. And maybe that's why you need this thing that you're talking about. I don't know.
To speak candidly, one of the things that bothered me is there's been a number of requests over time. And a lot of that money was just spent. And so personally, I thought it would be better to have some rails to slow down and pay attention to that process. I'm not saying the intentions were wrong. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm just saying that's what happened.
So there has been no plan in this church
Well, we
to
invested.
do what you're suggesting.
We have money now, and Jim could speak to it. We do have money in reserves.
Yeah, but is it invested?
Yes, it's.
Is it the 500 thing that you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah, it's
about
invested.
for this endowment? I mean, are our funds being wisely handled?
I believe the answer is yes.
Okay, then why do we need
And
this new thing?
and 3 years ago, we started a business administration committee to kind of meet regularly and talk more about it and be more intentional on what we
Then
do.
I don't know why we need this extra thing now. Maybe it's because I don't know.
In my mind, and I guess this is just, again, me speaking, my personal opinion, is the reserves that we have are a lot of times thought, well, we have the reserves, let's just use them. That's just my opinion of how, and then with council, changes constantly. So that view changes constantly. So if we're going to think about long-term, then this vehicle provides the long-term philosophy as opposed to, I got to get through my term. I'm saying this, and this is kind of how I was when I was on council. It was, and again, it's not the current council, this is just me and my background. So when I was president, it was like, okay, that's fine. It seems weird to me that we would spend more money than we have, but okay, I kind of didn't really get into it. And then the way the transfers happened and stuff, it was kind of didn't really seem obvious that was what was going on. And so that's just me. So I guess a lot of it has to do with I want the church to think long term, or at least have part of what we do more long term and strategic, as opposed to just I'm going to get through my term. It's okay. That's the way we've always done it. Kind of thing. Because we don't have that consistency because the council only serves for 2 years.
Well, I guess now just a comment, but as a former owner of a very small consulting business that didn't have a lot of money, in business terms, it's I think today, are you asking for our permission or agreement to move forward with a request for a proposal? I mean, you're not
Yeah.
asking for us to do it in business. There's always a company that, in this case, the church, is requesting of the congregation, may we have a request for a proposal to form an endowment fund.
That's
Is
what we
that
do,
it?
yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes,
we're not there yet. We're not doing the proposal yet.
We will have the proposal worked through
Yes.
and hopefully answer anybody's issues, like maybe we change this
Well, getting-
$25,000 thing so it doesn't automatically go there. Maybe we change the percentages, maybe we change a lot of things.
Yeah, I know.
And so this is, we're asking permission, like, do you guys want to do this? Or
Yeah.
are we wasting our time?
Yeah.
That's kind of the question today.
It is very time-intensive and expensive to write a proposal. I mean, I know that much. We all know that. But it does seem today is just we're not quite there yet.
We're not. No.
Okay.
Today is like, do we want to spend the time?
Mm-hmm.
This has been kind of battened around now for, 6 or 9 months, something like that? In the background.
Okay.
And so we finally got to the point where, all right, let's take it to the congregation today, see if anybody likes the idea or doesn't, and then we'll take it from there. We need the microphone over here. Here, Jim's gonna.
The way I would describe this is in business, there's a term straw man. You put something out there that people can look at and start, throwing darts at. And this is kind of what this idea is. To find out if there is interest in proceeding, as you say, it's more of a proposal that we're suggesting we create. We need to have some idea of where the committee's recommendations were at this point in time and what that proposal would look like. So as Paul said, any of these things can be changed. Just because we're following other churches' examples doesn't mean ours will look like this. But we needed to put enough information out there of where we were leaning so we could get an expression of interest if this sounded like a good idea. So you kind of call that a straw man. Later on, when the proposal's up there, we can throw darts at it. But if you didn't like anything about this, there's no point in proceeding. We can argue about the details, but if you like the concept, then that's a whole different story. But we needed to give you enough ideas of what the concept would look like to be able to start putting a proposal together, because otherwise it's still just our ideas, and we have no idea if anybody else is interested or not.
Yeah, can I suggest that on the last line of the proposal, I mean, we're agreeing, I think if we approve the motion, that we'll use actual legal and financial resources as necessary. So I think it warrants at least a cost estimate of what it would take to get us to the next level. We're talking $500, $5,000.
How about if we just add to the motion not to exceed $3,000?
There you go. I mean, there's a number.
Yeah, it's not going to take a lot of money to take the next step.
I think that's what we wanted to hear.
Anybody else?
Jim, are you in favor of this?
The question was, is Jim in favor of this?
I think it's a good idea to have a long-term plan. To respond to your prior comment, yes, the short-term investments are invested. That is the 367 that you saw on the balance sheet in the short-term category. But Paul's idea is we need to be doing more long-term thinking about the future of the church instead of trying to balance the budget every year on whatever we've got in the pot in the short-term investments. And so that's his way of describing the thinking we've had in the past. And as he said, everybody turns over on a recurring basis. So the idea is over time, and it's not going to happen overnight, over time we'll get some money that's reserved for growth opportunities. Could be parsonage for an associate pastor, could be in some things to support the committees, evangelism, for example, that's trying to get new members. That's going to be the focus of it. And the 90%, we could change that 90%. The idea was, and some of the other churches I think that have been talked to found, if you have a large bequest that comes in, say $100,000, the church wasn't expecting it anyway. So their budget isn't based on that anyway. So that money typically, if it went into something like this, it isn't a negative impact. And it then has the money available to invest and then support the church for years after that, instead of just being put into a pot that could be taken at any point in time. Yes, I do support it. I think it is something that's good for the long term, and it may take time to build up before it makes a difference. But if we don't have it, and somebody is in a position, as Paul described, where they want to have estate planning ways of dealing with taxes and things like that, and they want to make bequests that go along with that, they want to have the confidence that it'll be managed separately from the annual budget and as something that's for the long-term benefit of the church. If that appeals, there's nothing that we have at this point in time, as some other churches do, that someone could support in that manner. We just don't have that vehicle available. So why not have that vehicle available? So.
Yeah. He's good, isn't he? I like how you trust him more than me, though. I don't know. I see how it is. It's all good. Anyway, with that in mind, any other questions? Oh, here we go again.
Just one more, Paul. With the addition to the motion that you're apparently going to make, capping the exploratory expenses, I have no problem with exploring this. I think there are potential real benefits to it. So I'm assuming the motion actually reads the way I think it will. I'm quite comfortable in voting today for further exploration, but I don't want you or anyone else on the committee to think my voting affirmatively today means I will do exactly the same on the final proposal.
That's fine.
So
yeah, I don't expect it. Today is just, you guys want to learn more about it. And if the answer is yes, then we'll spend the energy to do that.
Just as far as I am concerned, don't confuse my interest in further pursuing this with a favorable inclination on it.
Yeah, that's understood. Yeah, we expect
That's all-
lots of darts from
that's all
you.
I'm
It's all
saying.
good. It is totally fine. And like Jim already said, this is just a straw man. This is just, if anybody wants to change something, they don't feel particularly comfortable with a particular thing, please let anybody on the Business Administration Committee know. That's Jim and Sandy and Julie and Rick Pearson. Let any of us know, or anybody on council. It doesn't matter. Just let anybody know. Okay. So you're going to read this, right? You wrote it already.
Any other questions?
I'm comfortable I can make the motion, and I'll just add to the end of what's written, because Jim and I spent some time trying to get that there. I'll just give us up to $5,000, just in case. I don't think we'll use it all, but if that's comfortable with the number. So what's written in adding up to $5,000?
Instead of that, replace that necessary.
Including the use of legal and financial resources up to $5,000.
Okay. You got that, Barb? Okay. So, Pastor has put a motion on the table. Is there a second? Betsy, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Betsy did. Okay, just a couple things I wanted to mention. I just wanted to let you all know that Jim is on the Business Administration Committee, so when these topics come up, it should allay your fears that Jim's there. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear. Yeah, it's not just Paul's idea. Okay, so, and the other thing, this came up earlier, but when Dee Dee Sherman passed away, she did make a specific request that her bequest be used for educational purposes. So I just wanted to, make you aware of that. And so when a potential project comes up or an idea, Pastor does take the extra step in contacting Dee Dee's relatives and say, we came up with this idea, is that okay with you all? So I just wanted to assure you that those extra steps are taken. And these, we, as a council, we do try to make a concerted effort and a serious effort to make sure those funds are handled appropriately. Okay, the other thing I wanted to clarify that Paul said is council members do participate more than 2 years. We changed it a little while back, and that was when I think that was Phil's idea. But basically, a council member has a term that goes from 1, 2 to 3 years, and then has an ability to re-up so that there is continuous movement off and on the council, because we came up to a year where almost the entire council was going to roll off. So we changed that a couple of years ago so that we always had some experienced members and then some new members continually. So anyway, that was a good idea, Phil. Okay, so the final thing on our agenda is something that came up recently that we'd like you to consider, and it is with respect to our parking lot. So Pastor's going to give you that update.
Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to kind of do a generalized thought on kind of where we are, and so that we can all hopefully move forward with excitement into the year. I think as we sit and we plan things for ourselves as a church, we're always in this balance of we want to be wise stewards of what we're given and use it appropriately, while also trusting that God shows up and does things that we never would have expected. We never expected going through 2020 and the PPP money in the history of the world. That's never happened where the government has done that. We took advantage of that. We never expected the preschool to do as well as it did. And because of Maureen's hard work and because of the teachers' hard work, that took off. God continues to show up to support this church to do amazing things. And so I am anticipating God continuing to show up as we trust in him and believe that he's in this place, doing powerful things through this place. And so if you look at our year this year, and you take the 501c3 that is Ascension Lutheran Church and Preschool, in the midst of 2021, we were not in our building for most of the first part of the year, almost a full year. We had a positive year. I mean, that's a Jesus thing, right? That is God showing up. We don't just believe that we're a nonprofit out there trying to bang through and find donors. We believe in God showing up. And so let's continue to pray for that and just say, Jesus, where are we going so that you can do the work and we'll go in that path? That being said, we need to continue to give strongly to the church. We need to support our congregation. The only way this thing survives is because of each one of us giving out of what God has given to us back to the work of the church. And that, in the worship service, the offering is a part of worship because that's a part of our spiritual life, is our giving. You know, today we asked about being front yard people and going into your community. Also, part of that is sitting down and saying, Lord, what can I give? What can I give? To the point of sacrifice, to the point of I want my giving to transform me. So I want to give so that I trust in what you're doing. You know, I know my friends, people who are working, they're in this time where the employee right now has all the power. I know friends who are getting raises just left and right. And my question is then, are we, when that happens for our families, are we going, hey, I've gotten more, how can I give more? Or do we go, well, $1,000 is nice enough to give the church, there you go. Or do we go, wow, God, you've blessed me by doubling my salary or giving me this much more. How can we give more? Because that's the way this church has survived for 60 years and will continue to survive. As Jim said, we have new faces. We have the 10:30 service. I looked out at some point in early December and went, 3 years ago, we wouldn't have known 70% of these people. God is just showing up, doing amazing things. We had a new couple today come to church at 10:30, unfortunately. And so they showed up at the very end. But then they got in the back with me and they said, we heard the service, we wanted to come do it 3 weeks ago. Last week, we went to the Ron Ascension down in Torrance, and we were like, was there a guest pastor last week? Because I'm not sure what's going on here. This week we come at 10:30, but next week, we're gonna be back. So they're working hard to get to us. They are working hard to get to us because God is doing things here, and he's flowing out of this place. The preschool families, they come on. There's a sense of peace that they get when we have the privilege of ministering to them. The events we've had with them, and the love that's there between the teachers and the director and the staff and everything in the families is just amazing. We have these families coming on. God is doing powerful, awesome things at this church. And we have to give into that so we can continue into that place. And so, I mean, it's just a very exciting year, a very exciting thing. I think we are staffed well for 2022. I'd love for us to have a youth director. That's not going to happen this year. Hopefully we'll pray that into existence in 2023 because we do need to strengthen our youth. But between Tammy, myself, Townsend, Lisa, and Joyce, and Marco, which is like all we're down to in staff, we are a tight ship right now. But I think we can do it for this year to then lead us into the future of growth. But man, thank you to everybody, our staff, to Maureen, to Tammy, to Lisa, to Townsend. Who else is here? I think that's it here, staff-wise. But you guys are working so hard, doing so much with not very much other help. So thank you for that. But what we're dreaming about this year then is if you drive into our church, I want to show you this. I do not think, and I think a lot of us don't think, the front of our church represents what's going on inside of our church. The love, the beauty, the joy, the peace that comes out of here. This is what you see driving into your church, okay? You can't unsee that sign once you see it. The parking lot is just all sorts of beat up. Then, this sign here is missing letters, doesn't have the word preschool on it, which I know Darlene was angry about from the time it got put up, doesn't tell much about a thing, is the wrong logo. We need to get that sign replaced. The parking lot also, right here, that is the parking lot taken this morning. That huge hole in the parking lot, those are all over our parking lot in different spots. That what you see underneath it is some fabric they put in when they redid the parking lot. And we're not even sure the last time they redid our parking lot because we only have Quicken back for 20 years, right, Jim? And we can't find the last time we wrote a check to redo the parking lot. So it's at least 20 years. But you come into our church, you see this sign that's like, we're here. You see this parking lot that is holding together, and you park and you come in and you go, this isn't what's out there. That's one of the projects that we want to attack this year. So we want to start a fundraising goal to redo our parking lot and to redo our sign. Right now, those combined numbers are somewhere around $100,000 when you put those two numbers together, but taken apart is about 60 and 40. And so we're going to start to talk about, to pray about, to think about how can we redo these things. Because our parking lot and our sign right now don't represent the great life that's pouring out of this place. And we got to have a sign that says preschool. We have to have a sign, and just right now, hold on, Grace. We have to have a sign where into the future, we can, they've just changed the rules in RPV that we can potentially have some kind of lit sign that makes, like, that tells announcements and things about going on here. That would be the very first church around to have one of those. Our parking lot, there comes a point with asphalt when you just can't repair it anymore. We're not quite there, but we're a couple of years from there. And the guys who did our parking lot, who gave our bids, they're like, you know what? As long as we don't have any significant rain, your parking lot will be fine. We all remember the end of December, beginning of January. I'm sitting in my house going, awesome! This is just what we need. We have significant rain. I'm just like in my mind watching our parking lot disintegrate. And I'm like, oh no. So we need to get a new parking lot here. So those are the two things that we're going to be dreaming about. And I believe that we can attack this problem very quickly. I mean, I think, if we sit around and we go, Lord, what do I have extra? What can I give a little bit extra to make this happen? We, with the people in this room, I really believe, could write $60,000 in checks and all of us still be able to eat out tomorrow night. But we just have to sit back, we have to pray, we have to think, we have to be able to get this opportunity so that we can redo this for the long-term future, redo the sign, and then the following year dream about, okay, where can we add the staff? Where can we grow into those things? So that is going to be our goal for this fundraising year, and the council is excited about that. We do have bids, but we're going to start advertising and talking about taking funds and let you know how far we are. But right now, we just really need this, and driving in, the one thing, when that parking lot looks good and that sign looks good, it will represent, I think, what's going on in here. So, questions? Yes, Sandy?
No, it's not a question. Remember how well that solar panel
Yep.
project went?
Exactly.
With God's help?
Exactly. So he's going to show up again, and I think it's going to be spectacular when it's done. So, yes, Grace?
If you had said this 4 months ago, you Girl Scouts would have done this like
Oh, for maybe the Girl Scouts will lay the parking lot. That'd be a good plan. Let's see that happen. Can't wait for that day. Wonderful.
What did she say?
Oh, she said that 4 months ago the Girl Scouts fundraising could have helped us, so she's gonna help with the cookies. So buy some Girl Scout cookies. Thank you, Grace, for your thoughtfulness. Yeah, Phil.
I just think it's important that everyone understand, as I think they probably already do, that at least as far as the paving is concerned, that isn't just an aesthetic situation.
No, yeah.
It's a safety matter as
Oh,
well.
absolutely.
And this is not an option for
Nope.
us.
No, we come to a point where we
We
just
have
have
to
to
do
do this
Yes, yes.
for the safety of our preschoolers, our congregation members, the hill. I mean, there's a zillion reasons. We are at the end of this parking lot's life.
Exactly.
And we can save it right now by doing some things and not have to dig it all up and redo it, which is just insanely expensive. But we are right near the end of this parking lot's life. So yeah, thank you, Phil. It's not just a pretty thing. Okay. Can I start closing prayer? We have pizza. We do have pizza outside. Thank you all for this meeting. Thank you for those watching online. And we are grateful for your presence. Heavenly Father, thank you for everyone here. Thank you for those watching online. Bless us as we go from here. Let us know that you are in charge. You have been faithful to this church for 60 years, and you will continue to be faithful. Let us look to your guidance. It's in your holy name we pray. Amen. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? Rich? We have a first.
All in favor?
Aye.